Welcome to this webinar on the AGU Honors Program on increasing the diverse pool of nominations for AGU Honors. My name is Eric Davidson. I'm the President-elect of the American Geophysical Union. I'm at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. The AGU Honors Program has some very high-level goals. First, we have a deep sense of connection to the AGU and the value of AGU affiliation. The AGU Honors Program should help deepen that sense and connection. We also want the program to reinforce AGU's strategic goals in scientific leadership, in talent pool, in development, in science and society. To achieve these goals, we need participation of our members of all stages in their career and of a broad representation of our membership. Our specific objectives are to enhance AGU's honors program to recognize and reward key elements of the mission, vision, and goals of the AGU. In particular, as you'll learn in this webinar, we recognize the need to draw more nominations from a larger and more diverse pool of nominators. And we also seek to create a high level of visibility for all AGU awards. I'm now going to call on my colleague, Mary Ann Holmes of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln to present some data on demographics of the AGU Honors Program.
Thank you, Eric. AGU is a partner society with the Association for Women in Science, AWIS, and conducted a study of professional societies to see where women stand in terms of receiving professional honors and awards. As you can see from these data collected by AWIS, the proportion of women in different kinds of professional societies is shown by the dark blue bar at the bottom of each set of bars for biomedical societies, mathematics societies, and physical science societies. The tan bar at the top shows that the proportion of women who receive professional awards from these societies is lower than their representation in the society itself, and that women are actually overrepresented among service and teaching awards. And this is an example of how our implicit biases cause us to associate women scientists with the nurturing qualities rather than those of scholarship. So AGU is not alone with this problem, but focusing in on AGU data, we can see that the proportion of women has grown over the last couple of decades, and they now comprise about 1/4 of AGU members. You can also see that non-US members have also been growing fairly steadily and reached 39% in 2014. We focus in on AGU data and see 1/4 of the AGU membership, and 39% of the members are non-US. And these show that after several years of effort, more women were nominated for awards. They were nominees as well as they were nominators. We still need to work more on non-US members and to have them participate in the honors and recognition program. Having more women in the pool of nominees yielded more women awardees and more fellows. Again, we'd love to see more non-US members participate as nominators. These data show the proportion of women at each stage of the award process, from being nominated to making the short list to receiving the award. They demonstrate that once nominated, both women and non-US members are successful at being selected as fellows of AGU. In this table, we compare the proportion of AGU women members who are eligible for fellow nomination based on age of members. The proportion of fellows who are women has increased in the last few years since a low point in 2012. We need to continue to pay attention to these issues to continue to have women fairly represented among the awardees. This slide shows that women are underrepresented among nominators and letter writers or supporters. And we provide these to encourage women to become active participants in the AGU Honors and Recognition Program. These data demonstrate that you need not be a fellow to successfully nominate a colleague for fellow. And to further discuss other myths and realities of the nomination process, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Tracy Holloway from the University of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Marianne. What I'm going to talk about now are a set of myths and realities that this committee came up with last year. We've spent a lot of time thinking about why the discrepancies exist between U.S. and non-U.S. and men and women and other underrepresented fields. And many of the comments that have come back from informal questions and also from structured surveys have focused on the unwritten rules of the nomination process. And so to tackle these unwritten rules, we are going to present now some myths and then the reality from the perspective of the AGU. So one myth is that the nomination itself doesn't really matter, that the candidate's own accomplishments, whether the number of papers or H-index, really determines who wins or loses. And this is really a myth that cuts across every award offered by the AGU. The nomination packet is essential for a strong nomination. The best nomination packets do report on the quantitative accomplishments, but they do so in a way that links with the criteria and expectations of the award, along with a compelling narrative. The letter should really state why you and other supporters view the person that you're nominating as outstanding and worthy of a major AGU award. Another myth is tied back to some of the statistics that Marianne presented, noting that the reason why current awardees are mostly male is because this reflects the demographics of the senior and accomplished scientists. And so, many people believe that we don't have to worry about the lack of diversity, that as we have a more diverse group of junior scientists who age through the process, that the diversity of nominations will naturally follow. But this is not true. Yes, the diversity of the field is weighted toward junior people, but this is not the only issue. At every career stage, there are women who are not being nominated for awards to which they are qualified. And this was nicely identified in a quantitative way by a study for the Goldschmidt Award in geochemistry. And there they tracked individual cohorts and compared men and women who had been nominated, not nominated, and won. And what they found is that there were many senior women who had never been nominated for this prestigious award who had records that were equivalent or even superior to those of men who had actually won. So that there's women who were in the running who should have been nominated but were never even considered because they were not nominated. We don't want this to be happening to AGU awards. We want to have all the qualified candidates have a seat at the table for full consideration. So I help run an organization called the Earth Science Women's Network, and there's a lot of discussion on ESWN about the awards process and how, as a junior person especially, one is supposed to navigate this world. And one of the myths that I think is most important in supporting early career people, and especially building diversity, is encouraging candidates to get the nomination ball rolling. So there's a myth that you should not ask to be nominated, and that there's this belief that if you're qualified, someone will take the lead and submit a nomination on your behalf. But in reality, there's many qualified people who are never nominated. And this may be because their colleagues are not aware of the AGU nomination process. It may be because their colleagues are busy. And it may be because they're not at a university that has a structured awards committee. There's many reasons why a very qualified candidate may be overlooked for a nomination. And if this is you, if you think that you're eligible for an award, you should not assume that you'll be automatically nominated. And a good step would be to make a friendly request to a colleague, maybe offering to help out assembling your CV, and this can increase your likelihood of being nominated. This is not in any way undermining the integrity of the AGU process, and in fact, having candidates gently move the process forward and be engaged helps the AGU because it increases the scope, diversity, and quality of the nominated pool of candidates. The next myth is also related to some of the data we have seen earlier in this webinar, which is that only AGU Fellows can submit nominations for other AGU Fellows. In fact, the reality is the AGU encourages all members to submit fellow nominations. Both fellows and non-fellows regularly submit nominations with a similar level of success. And in fact, in 2013, the success rate of the non-fellows submitting nominations was even higher than that of the AGU Fellows who nominated colleagues. In a similar vein, there is a myth that only senior scientists can nominate for major awards. But in reality, the AGU encourages all members to submit nominations, including junior scientists. Women are especially encouraged to submit nominations. I think this is a very important point, that we need to have not only all members of the community being recognized, but all members of the community playing an active role in the selection process and the nomination process. A similar myth is that only senior scientists should write support letters. And again, this is not correct. A strong nomination package can and should include senior, junior, and peer-level support letters. It is true that senior scientists may strengthen a nomination for a few reasons. They're more likely to have read and written more nomination letters. They may be a more familiar name to the review panel, and they may have insights that would present the candidate in a more competitive manner. But the review panel values multiple perspectives on the candidate, and junior scientists, such as former students or postdocs, really offer high-value input into the review process. And I think one rationale behind bringing junior people into the letter writing process is because this is a great way to diversify the group of scientists who have exposure to the awards process. And a junior person who is asked to write a nomination letter this year is in a great position then to lead a nomination in future years. That brings me to the next myth, which is that if a junior person wants to submit a nomination, then she or he should have a senior person sign the nomination letter. This is a widespread myth that nominations need to at least have a figurehead of a senior person. But actually, a junior scientist is encouraged by the AGU to submit a nomination, either solo or with a co-signer. And any nominator should take the time to understand the award criteria and build a case for the candidate. Just as stated already, a strong nomination includes a mix of letters. So if you're a junior person thinking about submitting a nomination, it would be wise to engage senior letter writers, a co-signer, and in the same way, if you're a senior scientist putting together a nomination, the AGU would encourage you to engage junior colleagues as letter writers or as a co-signer. The final myth that I'd like to discuss today is about the secrecy of the nomination process. There's a myth that the nomination process should be secret, that the candidate should never know whether he or she was nominated. And this is not the policy of the AGU. The AGU does not require secrecy or expect nominations to be conducted with the candidate in the dark. This ties directly back to the first myth, which is saying that if you think that you are qualified for a award, that it's okay to approach a colleague and, in a friendly, no-pressure way, ask to be nominated. And of course, you could never do that if the expectation was that everything is secret. The reason why the AGU does not require or expect nominations to be secret is because secrecy tends to disadvantage underrepresented groups. It's well established that secrecy in salaries adversely affects women. And in fact, in the United States, this was the motivation for a 2014 law protecting federal workers who discuss their salaries. Transparency in the awards process will very likely benefit underrepresented groups. It can also lead to stronger nominations by ensuring that the nominating team has access to an up-to-date CV and perhaps even the candidate's own perspectives on their major accomplishments. Most scientists feel good to have been nominated by a colleague, even if they don't win. So there's really no downside to making the process more transparency. That said, we recognize that on a personal basis, some AGU members may prefer to submit a nomination confidentially, and we recognize that there's some other AGU awards that do require that the nomination be secret. So if you're thinking that you may be nominated in secret by a group, it's always a good idea to keep an up-to-date CV on your on your website, and also link to publications so that if a peer wants to prepare a secret nomination of you, that they have the information they require, even though the AGU does not expect that nominations be conducted in secret. And with that, I will hand the reins back to Eric Davidson.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you also, Marianne, for your contributions. I hope it's become apparent that this is a topic that the AGU considers very important. We've invested considerable resources of forming a task force to study this issue. A number of staff members and volunteer AGU members have devoted considerable amounts of time to pull together the data that Marianne presented and the explanations that Tracy just described to you. But now we also need your help. We need your help to think of other ways that we can further engage members, including young members, to participate and to support our honors program. We need your help to think about how we can improve the way we recognize and reward our members' accomplishments and great work, and especially to draw a larger and more diverse pool of nominees and nominators. I'd also ask you to help us think about how we can raise the level of visibility of the AGU honors. Obviously, getting more people engaged in the nomination process will require that they know about the honors program, and hence we need greater visibility. How can we fully leverage the accomplishments and work of our honorees? There are several discussions underway now in various stages of how we could engage honorees, fellows in the work, the good work of the AGU. And finally, how can we measure success of our honors program? So we'd like to hear from you. And here are a number of email addresses that you may use to send in your comments and suggestions. Feel free to pause this webinar or to back up to this spot to spend the time you need to find these email addresses. Most importantly, I hope you'll take home the message that it's time to consider nominating a colleague for an AGU honor. Our honor cycle for 2016 opens on January 15, and we hope you'll seriously consider being engaged and being part of that process. Thank you very much, for listening to this webinar.